Welcome to the podcast where we discuss all matters financial planning and investing. This content contains general information only and may not be relevant to everyone. Please contact our office to make sure and determine if this is relevant for you. Hi and welcome to the podcast. I'm David Loughnane and I'm joined with my co-host Cole. How are you, Cole?
Good yourself, Dave.
Good. Today I'm really talking about something that I find really interesting is a lot of people get into their 40s and even especially getting into their 50s and they've got no retirement plan. How common is that?
Oh, we find it all the time, don't we? Yeah, most people. It's good. We say it's the earlier you start, the better. But yeah, a lot of people we come across are in that sort of mid-40s, close to sometimes even early 50s, and planning have a 10 to 15-year time frame. But yeah, they haven't done anything yet or anything significant yet. So yeah, it's very common.
And one of the things, a lot of people feel like they're too late. It's something they should have been doing a long time ago. And I find it's just it's a fear factor of the unknown. You know, how do you actually prepare for retirement?
Yeah,
or what does it look like? Or how much money do I need? Or, what am I actually going to do? Because most of your life in your working life is taken up by work, family. Then you get to that stage. What if work's not there? What if all the kids are grown up and they don't need you?
And that's the thing. That's the thing we talk to people. Everyone focuses on the money, and rightly so. Well, am I going to have enough? But they don't focus on that part. Well, what am I actually going to do? Really?
Yeah. So I always just tell people, look, take a breath. You're definitely not alone. Pretty much 99% of Australia is in the same boat.
Yeah.
I find there's so many people don't feel like they can progress or get to a place that they haven't probably even thought about. It's like, how many people actually sit down and think from a financial standpoint what they actually want?
That's right.
Let alone if it's this year,
Yeah.
let alone in 10 years' time or 15 years' time. So I think there's just so many people live day to day.
Yeah.
And that's actually a scary way to live where, to move forward financially, there's some sort of sacrifice involved, whether that's from cash flow, from, changing the way you do things. But getting to a position to be able to retire, I think that's a lot of people got a fear around that.
And I think it's like you said, it's people have, I suppose, competing needs or wants now, and so sort of kick the can down the road. It's like that's 10, 15 years away and they're delayed. And I think you're right, it's the sort of the unknown. And because it's like a big thing to think about, we don't know how much we're going to need, what that age is going to be. Well, we'll put that on the back burner, we'll focus on what we're doing now and then,
Yeah.
And then it comes around really quickly.
Yeah, it does. Man, I'm about to turn 52 and I'm like, oh shit, I'm getting grayer. Everything's getting harder. I can't do the things that I used to do. And it's the reality of life. Like we get older and it creeps up on us. But how fast? Like we're in, what is this month? We're in August already.
Yeah.
And I can feel it's just starting to get warmer again. So I can't wait for the rest of the year. I love summer. I hate winter.
Yeah.
I hate being cold. So I love the second half of the year, definitely way more. But a lot of people, you're getting into that stage where when people feel like they're behind, once they get into their 40s or 50s, they're actually generally in a different position than they were in their 20s or even 30s, where generally they're earning more money than they ever have. So obviously, as you're going through your careers, you start to earn a bit more money. Also, the kids are generally, going off the hands, or at some point in the near future, school fees and all those sorts of things are starting to get into a different phase. So they're actually getting into that position where they've got to watch out for lifestyle creep.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's like as that money starts to become available, they don't spend it. And then, from a planning perspective, they look to sort of create a financial plan around retirement.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's when like I said, all those things are sort of moving away and you've got more cash flow, whether it be through more income or less expenses, but then it's, I've got extra money now. And it's using that money wisely as opposed to spending on their lifestyle.
Up the wall, we're spending more at Dan's or, buying more on eBay. There's so many people have patterns, and to break that pattern, you've got to have something else you're after. Yeah. So like planning for retirement is one of those things that people, push. But as you get older, it's like, all right. And the number one fear or number one question a lot of people want to know is how much do I need to actually fund my retirement?
Yeah. And there's two questions. How much do I need and am I going to have enough? And there's two sort of tied together because they know what they have now and they're not sure if that's going to be enough. So it's like, how much do I need? It's not a yes or no. It's not it's such an individual thing.
Yeah, what are they actually on track for? So knowing the number, like there's a lot of numbers thrown around. And depending on what age you want to retire, I think the first thing you got to work a little bit backwards when you're coming to knowing what your actual number is all right, are you going to retire at 50? Are you going to retire at 60? Is it going to be 65 or whatever age it is, or is it going to be 67?
Yeah.
That's the first component. So you need to know roughly what age that you want to retire. The second one is, what is it going to cost you to retire? So from a expense point of view, and what you would actually do in your retirement. So would you go on an overseas trip? Would you update the car? Would you continue doing the lifestyle you are? Or I don't find too many people want to have a less lifestyle or do less.
Yeah.
They get into that position where they want to be doing at least what they're doing now. And some. And then if you're going to have more freedom, you're gonna have a lot more time as well.
We find with our clients that when you go through cash flow with him, you look at if you take out things like mortgages and school fees, etc., their lifestyle now is the lifestyle. It's what they're spending on entertainment, etc., groceries, all those things are going to continue when they stop working. Because like you said, if you become accustomed to eating out twice a week and doing this, doing that, suddenly you've got more time in hand. You're not just thinking, oh, well, I've got all this time in my hands, so now I'm going to set it at home. So people still want to do that. And then there's other expenses like travel and whatever else they want to do.
So it's even just working out the cash flow, because ideally we want the debt gone, but sometimes it won't be.
Yeah.
Obviously we want the kids off our hand, but people are having kids later.
Yeah.
One of our clients, he's 52, his wife's younger, but he's having another kid. And I'm like, man, are you crazy? 50, my age, having another child, I'll be like, oh my God. Yeah. So there's going to be obviously a lot of expenses in his world. So it's just really understanding, what it's going to cost you. Because if you want to retire at, say, 60 years old and you wanted, for example, 100,000 per annum, something like that, you're not going to get any government support until you're at least 67.
So,
and to fund that, you're not generally going to be relying on the government age pension kicking in. So the age pension kicks in when you're 67 for most people. And that's, you got an income and asset test to actually get some of that. And, if you've built up a few $1 million, you're not going to get any access to any of that until your money gets under the $1 million mark and starts drifting down. So there's funding between, from 60 years old through to 70, which is probably your peak spending. And then you've got from 70 to 75, which is a little bit less. And then from 75 to 80, everything definitely gets harder, and 80 on, it's just hard.
Yeah. So it's like someone like that, you said, in that case with 60 and needing 100,000, they're going to be relying. They're going to need the capital, like you said, the capital they're going to need to fund that sort of income. They'll be, potentially or likely excluded from age pension, so that'll kick in later down. So it's all their planning is like these different stages in terms of funding. Is it supplement by age pension, social security? But you're right. Someone who's 60 and hitting 100,000, they're going to need a few, couple of $1 million to get them going.
Yeah, well, you do that for the people who are really high income earners and they want to retire with 100 grand per annum or 200 grand per annum or whatever it may be. Really, the 20 times rule comes into it. So 20 times whatever they want to spend should last them out.
Yeah.
Taking into account income, taxes, and all those sorts of things, and just life expectancy. But let's say it's a totally different world if you want to retire at 65, for argument's sake, and you're happy to work through there and you just want 80,000 per annum.
Yeah. And that's, I suppose, if you work till 65, because then the flip side is you've got more. If you're employed and you're getting employer super contributions, that's another, if you look at the example of 60, that's another 5 years of earnings and employer contributions and earnings on that money in super, your money's sitting there longer. And 80,000, that's a lot. That's, if you look at, there's the retirement income index, and it's not a government organisation, but they give you an example of what they believe is a modest or comfortable lifestyle in retirement, and their comfortable is around 70. I think it's just under 75,000, 73,000 something. So 80,000 is that's, I suppose, normal if you think about people's expenses nowadays. A lot of people think, I think back, a few years ago, and you think 100,000, that's a lot of money. It used to be around, if you had $1,000 after tax income, it'd be so comfortable. And now you think about that, it's $52,000 a year. It's probably not going to get you.
No, well, the age pensions, if you're 67 and you get the full age pension, it's for a couple, it's about 50,000. It's just under. Yeah. So at the end of the day, though, but if you're looking to do that, you'd need to fund yourself from 65 to 70. 67, sorry. So 2 years before you would get any age pension help. And then depending on what your assets, if you've got 500,000 or 600,000 in super, and depending on when this is happening, you'll be entitled to a fair bit of the age pension, if not all of it, right? And then basically getting 50 grand and then topping up from 30 grand from a source like superannuation or something like that. A lot of people can get that, get to that position of, it might seem like a lot of money, 600,000 or 700,000, but if you're working longer, getting more money in there, it can turn into a lot of money fast. And we've seen that. Like we've had $500,000 counts over the last 5 years just with contributions, bits and pieces, hit over $1 million.
Yeah.
So in 5 years, it's really jumped really quickly from just a lot of people earning more, but also so their employers putting more into their super now. And then, if they take the extra level of care and put a little bit more in there, it jumps again. So getting the first scenario, getting to that 80 grand per annum, and if you wanted to work fairly late into your 60s, I think it is relatively achievable for a lot of people. But then you've got the other side of it to want to retire around 60 mark and 100 or 150 grand per annum. That's what a lot of our clients want to do. Yeah. Obviously, we've got time generally to build up, the millions of dollars of assets to actually be able to fund those. So really knowing, getting back to what do you need to know, it's really, you need some time on your side. I always say it's really hard to, in a short period of time, it's hard to create a whole retirement nest egg and enough income and all that sort of stuff. But over 10 to 15 years, you can do amazing things.
Yeah. I think the knowing your numbers is important because when you look at, there's a lot of stuff out there, obviously a lot of information. And when it comes around retirement, they always throw around like $1 million is the figure. Everyone thinks they need to be a millionaire. But like you said, if you need $100,000, $150,000 income, that may be you. But if you $80,000 are going to work later, it may seem like a stretch, but until you know your numbers and you know what your goals are in terms of stopping work, etc. If you're going to work till later in life, then like you said, 80,000 from age 65 is still considered normal retirement age is very, very achievable for most people.
I think heaps of people can achieve that. If they have a plan. It comes back to that. If most people don't have a plan, they're really scared. They're not really sure what to do and what sort of even in small sacrifices. What do they need to do to actually get it? I think they're really great points. So that comes back to people's cash flow. When you starting to create some sort of financial plan, it comes being responsible around, generally people know what they're earning. Yeah. I'd hope you do anyway. Yeah. But generally most people don't know what they're spending. Yeah. And that's just a reality. We run into a lot of people. So it's creating a system around your cash flow to get a good understanding to really probably, start allocating extra to that retirement plan if you need to.
Yeah. And like you said, I think you said at the point before about knowing your numbers is knowing what your expenses are now, and it's like the reverse engineering. It gives you an idea of what you're going to need. Because a lot of people don't, like someone's, 15 years away, they don't really know what they're going to spend, but getting like a good, clear understanding of your cash flow will help you understand what you'll take out the mortgages and kids, etc., things like that. But your other expenses are pretty much going to be the same. So it gives you a good idea as a starting point. And then it helps you sort of work backwards to know how much money you're going to need to sort of fund that income. And then also with, a lot of people earn really good incomes, but they don't have much to show for it. But when you go through their cash flow and it hits them in the face and they can see where their savings to be made. And like I said, that comes down to planning and being more responsible with your cash flow.
Yeah, and it's hard being that responsible thing. We still feel like we're 20 even though we're a bit older, right? Yeah. But getting control of the cash flow and allocating the money is really super important because obviously if you don't have any spare, there's not much else you can do. You're just going to get what you've got get what you're on track for. But most people don't know what they're on track for. So getting a really good understanding of what you're on track for, that will help you decide whether you need to make some changes. So it's, I'm a major fan of having your best ideal lifestyle you can today, within reason, but also making sure you're planning for tomorrow. Because a lot of people say, well, what if something happens to me tomorrow? That could happen to anybody.
Yeah, right.
It is what it is. Yeah. But we don't want to get down, it's very hard to change your mind when you're 65 and say, you know what, I want to retire with some money and you're broke.
Yeah,
and you have to keep working. So I feel like we work so much of our lives, getting to that position to just make sure you look after, and that's what we're going to talk about next, whether it's your super or whether it's your business or whatever it may be, that those things are going to be enough to actually fund you and you actually know what that is. So then you can just really get on with your life. You don't have to worry about things as such. So really building out your investment engine. So really when it comes to retirement and strategies and so forth, what do you feel what investment vehicles most people are using when they retire?
Super is obviously the big one because a lot of people, unless you're self-employed and you're not sort of doing that, anyone who's employed there's money going into super. So that's, I suppose, the cornerstone of Australia's retirement income system. And there's other things as well, but that's the big one. And it's probably the one that it's the biggest one. In my view, it's the biggest one, but but it's also the most ignored one because it's such a thing. I speak to people in my friendship group and say, "Oh, that's 15 years ago." I remember 10 years ago, I was like, "Oh, that money will be taken by the government." They don't really worry about it. And it's no, back then it was like you got 10% of your income going in there. Like you should really take an interest in it. So I think definitely super. Definitely.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like I was done a fact find meeting with a guy on Friday, a new client, and he just had a conspiracy theory. And he goes, "I just think the government are going to take it." Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And there's two different things, and I think a lot of people get confused around superannuation is your money. Obviously, there's rules around it and how it can get taxed and when you can access it and all those type of things. But it is your money, right? Exactly. The government are going to just come along and take all that money. Then you've got the age pension, where that in previous years has pushed out, the index is up. It's there as a backbone to protect people. Yeah. And a lot of people, that's where this conspiracy comes in. I think they'll just take it anyway. Yeah. Well, they can't just take your money, right? Yeah. So, building out your superannuation to create what's called an account-based pension and start drawing it down over time is, for most people, is going to be one of their best investments. The income and the capital gains on the investments and so forth at current legislation will be all tax-free if you're in pension phase and you're under certain limits. Yeah. So you really can't beat that.
No, and like you said, there's it is your money and there's restrictions around it, but I suppose to have that significant tax incentives or benefits around super, the trade-off is that you can't access the money until you stop working.
Until the retirement age. That's it's there. It's called preservation age, right? So it's a time that the government's hoping you get to be able to work to, or something like that. And then you've got share market investments. So if you want to retire earlier, you've probably got your superannuation is going to be great from 60 onwards potentially. But then you've got, what if you wanted to retire at 50 or, 55? And that's where a lot of people that, a lot of our clients invest into the share market as well.
Because that comes back to the first point about the numbers is that if you retire at 50 and you don't have access to your super till you're 60, there's a 10-year window time frame that you've got to fund from other sources. And it's, so, and there's the other, like you always want to be investing in money, in assets that are going to grow in value and I suppose give you an income. So you've got share market investments because they're liquid, obviously it's capital growth, and then there's other things like property, investment properties, et cetera. Or like you mentioned before, business owners who can, if they have the ability to step back from the business, they can sort of run itself and provide them with an income. So there's different, like everyone's obviously individual and there's different sources, but it's just knowing, your situation, where you're at and what the options are.
Yeah, I think when it comes to property, whether it's your own home, whether you have investment property or 10 investment properties, it comes down to how you're actually going to fund your retirement. So the funding mechanism and understanding the tax around that. And like, obviously, if you've got property or investment property, you can't sell a bedroom or two. Generally, you can rent one out. You can't sell it generally. So, they're going to be sold down over time, depending on when, the optimal time from a tax perspective, how all those things can work. Whether you're downsizing your house as well. So a lot of people are asset rich and cash flow poor, so they could have millions of dollars worth of house, could even be their own home, and they might like, well, we can transition to a $1 million apartment and grab $1 million there as well. So there's more ways than one to actually get access to the money you need to fund your retirement. And then also the last one you mentioned on there is business owners. They've got two options where if they can run the business without them being involved, that can continue creating income for themselves, or if they sell it. And there's some really generous tax effective ways, depending on what their businesses are at the moment, to be able to sell it because a lot of business owners' retirement plan is their business.
Yeah, that's right.
So that can be, a single sole strategy around your business can be dangerous because your business could be worth zero tomorrow. Yeah. If something happened in, who knows in what instances. But I have seen it where, a lot of people have thought that within their different companies and so forth, this is probably more corporates, that they had a bunch of shares and they went down to zero, when they thought it was going to be a lot of money. So it's really dangerous to rely on one strategy, making sure you're building out lots of strategies.
And that's, I suppose, just in investments in general, isn't it, is diversification, so spreading your risk. So, business owners should really consider that because, like you said, they really neglect most, I should say all of them, a lot of business owners neglect superannuation because they're pumping all the money back into business and growing the business.
I'll do that later. I'll do that later. So once you actually, from a position, I think, really automate and stay consistent. So once you've actually created a plan, I find setting everything up automatically, the contributions going to super or going to debt or going to the share market or going to your property or whatever it may be. If you set it up where you can automate it, I always say generally systems and plans work. People don't work so well. So if you've got to manually do something, I'll do that later, I'll do it next week. You've always got a decision to make. You want to try to actually get rid of the decisions in your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where automation comes in. The money just does its thing.
Yeah.
And then you've got to, hopefully you've left over with some money to do your thing and just stick within those boundaries, and generally you're fine.
I think if you take it's like the old, if you take the money away from take it away from them, I say inverted commas, but through automation. So it's not there, it goes from their pay, whatever, straight on the bank account, straight to where it needs to go. And if it's not there, it's not there. And then there's obviously some discipline in around that as well. But yeah, that works best. I think we've said on a few podcasts, it's, if you've got this great plan, but you never implement it, or it's implemented in drips and drabs, if you've got a plan to implement it, if you do it through automation, so everything takes care of itself, then it's a lot more, I suppose, a lot more successful.
100%. I know from our clients, and we've got hundreds of clients, and if they do what they're meant to do, they get the result they're going to get, right? And it's just amazing, over time when I review clients over and over again, how far they've progressed. It's just amazing by staying consistent. Obviously, they know we're watching. We're making sure if something was meant to happen, why hasn't it happened, or has it happened? And I would say, majority of people who are with us do exactly what they're meant to do, like to the T. There's no use having us if you're not going to do that, right? And it's very rare you'll find one or two. I would say maybe 3 or 4% of our client base struggle, to do where, a good over 95% do exactly what they're meant to do. And they get the results over time. Over 10 years, you just go, oh my God, like from where I started to where I am now, life's totally different. And that's where the plan comes in. They stay consistent. They really automate everything they're going to do so they don't have to make too many decisions.
And the one or two that don't, when you look back and go, well, if you had done this,
I've got probably 2 or 3 clients that always question what we say, and they do various things. So they do some and some different and want to change it. It's cost them a lot of money over time by doing that. So it's, when someone will say to me, is it a good time to put money into super now or the share market or property or whatever? It's time in the market. Only time will tell when was the best time to put something in. Because whatever you think the market will do next, probably it'll do something different. So I definitely don't try to predict it. Obviously there's different times where I've got an indication what I think will happen, but I'm proven wrong a lot of the time. So don't try. But from a plan, we know if you implement a financial plan that's sound, it's generally going to work for you. And I haven't seen it go wrong.
And we know because hundreds of people say.
And that comes down to really the mindset shift around going, you know what? I've winged it through my life. I've got into my 40s or 50s, and whatever got you to there is generally not going to get you to what we're talking about, is having an awesome retirement and continue living how you want to live without creating a plan. So it's just understanding as, how many people have actually got a financial plan. I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but I'd say it'd be a lower number, right? It'd be a low number. But how many people would love a plan? I would say most people. I would say over 90% of people would rather a plan than not. Do you know what I mean? So it's getting to that position from a mindset, knowing that, I need a plan to actually get to these positions, and then understanding you're actually in a much better position than you were 10 years ago to actually create this plan. And then once you create this plan and implement it, you'll be so relieved. I see all of our clients who, once they've got something and they're implementing or moving forward, all the stress goes.
And that's the thing is, people's always searching. I think I don't know the stats, but people are always asking or trying to find out how much do they need, do they know enough, etc. But always think back, so if you knew that you don't have enough, then what do you do about it? Then you need the plan. So it's like people are searching this information. And once you've got it, well, what do you? And even if you were on track, but then like we spoke about, what's the importance of making sure, like automating, making sure you stay on track. And that without a plan, it's like I think you said, and we come across a lot of people as well. They got to a certain point. I think we mentioned the last podcast we were talking about. They get to a certain point and they say, "I've got here, and I just need help with the next step because I don't think I can do it on my own."
Absolutely. It's very hard to, from a limited view, if you've got parents that are very wealthy and they've created wealth and you're going down that path, that will probably help you. But if most people's parents weren't that wealthy, they don't really know what to do either. If you want to get to a different position, I know a lot of people come in and say, I don't want to be like my parents. Definitely there's some that say, I want to be like my parents, So it's knowing what your end game is, but they haven't seen, we're lucky enough to see like hundreds of clients what worked and hasn't worked. So it's just as well, just understanding from a planning perspective what needs to go into a plan. what needs to be implemented. And it's just amazing to me. Like, I know when someone chats to me, I know, all right, you can do A, B, and C, and you can get to this position, but they don't know that. So if most people knew by making the small changes that generally they would need to, that they'd be able to get a different outcome, most people would actually do it. So you got any final thoughts on this subject?
Like I said, with the people's searching out, is it enough, do it enough, that age where they think it's too late. But like you said, it's never, starting early is good, but it's never too late. But you've got to take action at some point. You can't keep kicking the can down the road, because like I said, if you're in your mid-40s now and 60s, the number you're working towards, 15 years will come around pretty quickly. Yeah,
absolutely. So I find even people in their late 30s are generally looking on an early retirement, so their plan starts early. Then you've got your 40s who can have, make major changes and get an, incredible retirement. They're still looking to retire earlier. Generally, that's a really consensus that people want to retire early as well. Then when you get into your 50s, and if you haven't started yet, making sure over the next 10 years or 15 years, you can have an awesome retirement or ease back and all those sorts of things. And then once you're in your 60s, you are where you are, and obviously there's different strategies even at that level. So even late 30s, 40s, 50s, and in the 60s, there's different strategies and things you can do to really improve your position. And there's just things that they don't know or don't understand the rules, because the superannuation system and the aged care system or age pension system and so forth, they're really complicated in Australia. It's extremely difficult to work out yourself if you haven't got some help with that. But at every stage, you have opportunities and you can improve your situation if you only knew how. It's, from our view, if you need some help with this, please feel free to reach out and have a chat with us. We'll see if we can help you out and if that makes sense. But if not, you should be looking at, doing a bit of work on it yourself to get to a position to be able to continue your lifestyle, because you know what? It'll come around pretty quick.
quickly.
Thanks for your time, Cole.
Thanks,
and chat you on the next one.
Cheers.